Hey guys, it's Allison, and today we're going to be going over how I got into Japan's top university, the University of Tokyo. So I am currently a grad student there in an English program, and I am an international student, not an exchange student, so I applied directly to the school. I'm not attached to any home university or anything. My home university is Tokyo. Also, I am a master's student, so honestly, I don't know too much about undergraduate applications, but from what I understand, the PhD application is very, very close. So if you're looking to apply for a PhD program, I think this video will be of some help for you. So before we get into the application process itself, let me just first say you don't have to go to the University of Tokyo. There are plenty of schools in Japan, plenty of great ones. So I just encourage you to go through all of those schools and look at the programs they offer in English or Japanese if you can do that. But honestly, no two programs are gonna be identical. I would also pay close attention to the professors that you can have as a supervisor, because in grad school this really means a lot. I know in undergrad it basically meant nothing, at least for me, but here it's really important that you can identify a professor, or preferably two, maybe three, like as backups, that you could work closely with, because a lot of the applications are actually going to ask you to fill this out, and if you're not connected in some way like that, then the University of Tokyo does have name power. But if, for example, you want to major in like business, then this isn't the school for you. And honestly, there's a lot of people who just aren't gonna have the grades, I guess, to get into the school, and that's totally fine. Everyone's different. Don't be so obsessed with the name, I guess. I'd focus more on the quality of the program and what it will mean to you. Because I get a ton of people asking me how to get into the University of Tokyo, and they have no qualifications to back themselves up. And yes, you do have to work hard. You do have to put in legwork 2-3 years in advance to get into the school. Really, any school that's top rated, you have to do this. So it's fine if you don't qualify for the school. Just go with what works best for you, and of course apply to various programs. Don't just do one. Okay, so I'm in an English humanities program. I'm gonna stress this. It's humanities. It's not science or math or physics or anything like that. So honestly, I think the requirements are quite a bit easier compared to that, because I think those fields are a lot more competitive in Japan, and especially at the University of Tokyo. So I'm just gonna be honest, I don't have like the super like top grade qualifications that some people do and some people need. It's just how it is, especially humanities in Japan. It's not as strong as the sciences. So I'm going to be talking about the application process now for humanities programs. Science ones will probably be similar, but not exactly the same. So first off, most importantly, each school has its own application form. There's no like common form you can fill out and submit to them all. You have to do each one by one, and they can be quite long. And in these, they're gonna want like a picture of you, because it's Japan. They're gonna want you to, just list your personal information, any work or internship experience you've had. And there will be some short like essay questions probably about your life, but because they're all quite different, I'm not gonna really talk about those here. So of course you need a diploma from your undergraduate institution. In the case of like Americans, no, it does not have to be like the real official copy, because they don't really hand those out in some universities. A copy is fine in this case, because you also will need your transcripts. So let me take the opportunity now to talk about GPA. In general, I would say if you're applying to a grad program, you're going to need at least a 3.2. For the University of Tokyo, I would say you should aim for a 3.7 at least. And this is on the American scale, by the way. A 3.5 will be good enough probably to scrape by if you do have other relevant experience that boosts up your application. The GPA, it does matter, but it's not like the deciding factor. You have to look at the application as kind of like a whole thing. So if you are still an undergrad, I would really work on getting straight A's from here on out at any cost you can. If you messed up like in the first year but by the end you're getting straight A's, then I think, they're gonna understand what happened. That you got more serious about school and you realized, what you wanted to do. Because honestly, my freshman GPA was kind of just garbage, but I was able to bring it back up through a lot of hard work and a lot of A's. So another thing you'll need is an English proficiency test if you're not a native speaker or if you didn't go to an English undergraduate institution. So if, for example, you went to school in China and you're Chinese, then you're gonna need to provide some sort of English test in which you got very close to top marks on. The tests they'll accept differ on institutions, so just look that up first. So next is a GRE score. Some places I think don't need this, but I would say most do, so I would just go ahead and do it. If there's any doubt, just do it, because you don't want to be in that situation where you don't have a GRE score. So the value of the GRE score is going to differ depending on what program you're entering. So for example, for humanities, the verbal score, the writing score, it's going to be way more important than the math score. My math score was not great, but my verbal score and writing score were very good. So I would say aim for the top 90 percentile at least. If you're aiming for the University of Tokyo, again, just scale all these scores back that I'm mentioning a little bit if you're applying to a little bit lower ranked institutions. So another part is the personal statement. Mine had to be quite short, but they needed to fit in a lot of information. So you're gonna have to probably rewrite this a few times. So why this specific program? Why is this program good for you? How does it relate to what you've done? What experiences do you have that make you a good fit for this program? And because you are an international student, why Japan? What makes you think that you should be in a Japanese university to do this, or what drew you to this? You don't need a super legitimate reason, but you need, something. Because they're going to want you to specify why the program fits, you're probably going to have to kind of change this quite a bit for each program you apply to. So something else, not every program I looked into actually required this, but you will potentially have to list your research experience. This is what trips people up who just think they can kind of apply without really thinking about it. They just decide 2 months ahead of time, yeah, I'll apply to go to Japan. But it's not that easy. Especially if you've already graduated undergrad, this is probably going to be pretty hard for you to get if you don't already have it. I'm just going to be honest. But again, not every institution, not every degree will require this, and you don't have to go to the University of Tokyo. So they're going to want you to list all the research experience you have. So this could be lab work, it could be research papers, it could be thesis, thesi, I don't know. If you don't have a lot, then I would just say reach into coursework you did in undergrad and write something down. Of course, if you did research at internships or in a lab, that's probably going to be great. But for humanities, especially, a lot of work you've done with professors or essays, things like that, you should really focus on. This is really just going to be pretty unique to each person. But if the program you're applying to does require this, I would say you're gonna need something to put here. And if you don't have any, then find a way how to get it. Okay, so next is something I was really stressed about. It's the research proposal. So this is what your master's thesis will be about. You're proposing what you'll do for it. This can be a huge pain because there's a good chance you're gonna have to rewrite a new one for different programs. Because your research theme, it really needs to fit with each program. So if you're applying to slightly different programs, you might have to change the research you're doing. I would also connect this to your potential supervisors that you've picked out. If they have any relevant, experience in that area, that would be great. But you don't need it. You don't need it to be super connected in the humanities. In science things, I do think you really should pay more attention to what labs they have at the school. But for humanities, you can be a bit more liberal with it, in that as long as there's a professor who could generally oversee you, It'll probably be fine as long as you can connect it to the overall theme of the program itself. And one thing to note, super important, you can change this later. You're not like tied to this. A lot of my classmates are changing their research from what they proposed in their application. It's totally fine. So I wouldn't worry so much about that you're going to be, stuck with this research you don't really like for 2 years. You definitely have the opportunity to change it. So I would just go with something that you would both feel happy doing and that fits with the program itself. So next is your undergraduate thesis. Or if this is your second master's degree, then your master's thesis. So the programs may say this is optional, or they might not have a slot for it at all. If they don't have a slot for it, good for you. They're probably going to want some sort of research instead. But if the program you're looking at has it optional, I would say it's actually more required. For my program, for example, it was optional, I believe, but all of my classmates have done an undergraduate thesis. And I know in America that this isn't required at most schools. So if you are still an undergrad, then you'll have to take the initiative and you're going to have to figure out how to do it yourself. Most schools will have some sort of way for you to do it, but I would say really try to get an undergraduate thesis if you can. And if you can't, then you will need some other sort of long paper. They did accept like term papers instead if you didn't have it. So either way, you're gonna need some really good work to show for this, because this is gonna reflect if you've already done a thesis in undergrad, then they're gonna have a lot more confidence that you can actually finish the master's program and produce a thesis. So something else is Japanese language ability, because it's Japan. Because it's an English language program, I don't think any programs are gonna actually require you to be any degree of fluent in Japanese, but most of them will have an area where you can list your JLPT score. So if you have any score, I would say list it, even if it's like in 5, because it shows that you're trying and that you're interested in Japan. And some people may kind of need it more than others if the research you want to do needs to be carried out in Japanese. But again, it's not required. You don't need this, just if you have it, it's nice to have. So something else is letters of recommendation. All the programs I looked at needed 3, some only need 2, but I would say have 3 people in your pocket who you can kind of use for these letters of recommendation. And this is important. They should be academic. At least for the University of Tokyo, they really want it to just be professors, things like that. It depends on, the program specifically, but I would say you're probably going to need to have 3 academic letters of recommendation. But if you've already been in the workforce for a few years, this could be a little bit more lenient, but you'll at least need 1, preferably 2, even if you're in the workforce already. So I think that's about it for the application documents itself, but I would also like to touch briefly on internships. I think this is pretty important. If you're trying to make yourself stand out even more, you're probably going to need, something. If you have the opportunity to get internship or, real job experience, then that will only boost your application. It can't hurt it, especially if the field is related to the degree. So really, as you've seen, it's basically it's really similar to American graduate school applications, I think, because it's an English program. If you're applying for the Japanese stuff, I think it's going to be completely different. Also, some programs will need you to have an interview. If you're a PhD, you'll probably have an interview. Mine did not, but be aware of the possibility. If English is your second language, then this might be a little bit higher of a chance, just if they want to check your actual English ability. But overall, it's not an impossible thing to do, but it really takes a lot of time to fill all this stuff out. And honestly, if you haven't been doing the prep work for it for a few years, then it's gonna be really hard. But again, you don't have to go to a top university. There's plenty of good universities in Japan. So again, I just stress that you look up all of the programs related to what you want to study, see what they have, and review your own personal work history, your own academics, and just see what you think you qualify for. But either way, you can apply. Even if you don't get in, it's just a no. And the application for public schools here is about $100 US. For private schools, I think it's more than that. So yeah, it is expensive, but I think they kind of all are for grad school. It kind of sucks, but... So yeah, that's what you're gonna need if you want to go to grad school here in Japan. So far, I do enjoy it, even though it's online right now. It's a lot cheaper than the US, I'll tell you that. But going to grad school here, it's definitely not an impossible goal, so don't view it like that. As long as you've put in even a little bit of effort, you'll get in somewhere. So just go with what feels best for you, apply, and just see what happens. Alright, I do think I'll make this a series, so I'll have more videos coming out about Japanese university, like the workload, what's life like here. So be sure to subscribe and stick around for that. And make sure you like the video and leave a comment below if you have any more questions or video requests in the future of topics you want me to cover. My name is Allison, and I'll see you next week. Bye!